my screen just did something really weird and spooky. I feel like this light is a little too much in my face, so we're just gonna... There we go. That is much better. I look kind of crazy right now. I'm breaking out really bad because I was on tour, and I feel like whenever I'm on tour, just like sleeping in hotels and things like that, I just feel like my skin breaks out, and I really need to brush my hair. I found large knots in it. Not to be self-deprecating, but I like literally just noticed these things just now. Like, please look at this. We're here to talk about books tonight. I'm very, very excited about this. I'm eager to see if you all like this. As you can see, I do not have slides up on the screen. I have a collage, if you will, about the 2 books we're going to talk about tonight. Normally, I would just talk about 1 book, but these were both very, very, very short. So... what I did is I read them, and then after I read them, I went through and kind of, it looks like you really can't tell because of the lighting, but I highlighted some stuff that I want to share with you guys. If you did not see my Hustler stream, this will still be interesting. Like this, you guys know me. I love a 2-parter that can stand alone. Hello, classmates. Also, I want to say, to all of my stream people that came out to watch me do stand-up, thank you so much. There was a lot of people that after the show were like, oh, I watch your stream. And that really just warmed my heart so much. I really, really liked that. Twitch didn't notify you guys? Well, that's fucking lame. Happy Thanksgiving, Eve. What are you guys in charge of? Anything? I'm making a pie. We'll see if it goes well. I've never done that. So I'm going to buy a pie and then make a pie. And like best case scenario, we have 2 different types of pie. Worst case scenario, I can still show up with a pie. Just moved to Nashville. I would die to see your show. We are going to Nashville. When are we going to Nashville? Soon. Very soon. I think like maybe next week. December 3rd. December 3rd, we will be in Nashville. Please come. I'm excited to go back to Nashville. That's where I did my first show with them. Yes, I will be with the Unteachables at the Nashville show. Bread rolls, I'm making them from scratch. Nice. I'm making my casserole and chocolate strawberry turkeys while watching tonight. I made an apple pie for my work Thanksgiving and the pan shattered. Damn, that sucks. You're coming to the Atlanta show? Might be alone in my house because of the snow. God, y'all are going through it. I will not be doing Thanksgiving, but I'm drinking Thanksgiving Eve. And that's so real of you. Speaking of, I need to get tequila. Like, that's actually imperative. Extremely, extremely, extremely imperative. My glasses are a mess. Like, let's get into it. We're going to be very casual vibes tonight. I don't really have, like, a firm structure to this book conversation. I figured this is the first one. We would just kind of feel it out and then move from there. I'm in charge of the walk. What can I say about that? That's HR approved. Exercise is so important. It really, really is. Yay, unbanned on YouTube. Can still in the Twitch chat, though, because it's the best chat. It really is. I am unbanned on YouTube, which I need to post to the Park Avenue stream. I, kept trying to, and it wasn't working when I was gone. I just remember that in this exact moment. So, which book... Actually, I'm not going to ask you. I know which book we're going to talk about first. The first book we're going to talk about is The Sophisticated Hustler, because it is the one that I read first. And then after I read this, I was like... no, I need to read Underscore as well. So I'm going to give you like a little SparkNotes version of Scores was an article written by, I think her name is Jessica Kessler, and it was I believe New York Times piece, but I've also found it on her personal website as a journalist, about what at the time was considered a local news story. There was a group of strippers who were arrested for allegedly drugging men and then swiping their credit cards, which it hit local news in New York, which like New York City local news is dumb shit, doesn't really pop up on there. They have a lot going on. So it was a decently big story. It's not like it just came out of nowhere. But Jessica Kessler, the journalist who wrote The Hustlers at Score, interviewed the women and was much more in depth and kind of gave like truth to the story of like a more nuanced level of like who the players were, how they got in trouble, all of that, as opposed to the original news stories that were just kind of like strippers arrested. And so the top picture in the middle is their mugshots. The one below that is like them being in and out of the court proceedings. That article, The Hustlers at Scores, went pretty viral. The name of the club was Scores. And so then Hustlers, the movie with Jennifer Lopez, that I'm sure a lot of you have seen, came out kind of loosely based on this. So I did a stream about this not long ago. Maybe that was like 2 months ago or something like that. Relatively recently. And when I did the stream, I came across these two books. And this is the key thing to remember here. That's upside down. Is that the Sophisticated Hustler, Rosalind, the woman on the left, you see, she worked with the movie directors. She was very involved with this. She was the main one being interviewed in the article that made it kind of go like OG viral. She was the original. This is her book. Samantha, the girl on the right, a little bit older, she was not happy about the movie. She did not do these interviews. Sometimes she would give little comments here and there, but she was not in the media nearly as much as Rosalind was. This is her book. And you might be thinking, wow, she had so much more to say because her book looks thicker, but it's not. It's not. So both of these, I don't mean this with any hatred because I'm not a published author and I know it's hard to write a book, but both of these are not long. They're very, very short. And what I'm about to show you will also be groundbreaking. So this one looks like more of a book, like it's 185 pages. Like you can have a short book that's like 185 pages. Please look at the way that it's formatted and how large the margins are. So, yeah. And then not the same thing, but different vibe, but same goal of like trying to fill pages. Oh, I literally flipped it to the perfect page. I put lots of repeats because she has like her own quotes on these pages, and she does that a number of times in the book. Like there's another one. Yeah, it's kind of giving 5-paragraph essay. I found both of these to be pretty redundant. I really liked them because I'm interested in this story and I know a ton about this story. If I had not done a stream about this and like truly deeply understood this on a detailed level, these would have been the most confusing books of all time. Even when reading them, I was like a little bit confused. Like, part of it is because they use fake names for everybody, and so like that made things kind of hard to follow, but neither of them really go in like chronological order. I don't think chronological order is like the only good way to write a book or the correct way, but I think if you're not going to go in chronological order, you need to be like really intentional about your story flow. And with these, because I kind of feel like I've read them twice now, because I read them both and then I got the idea to talk about them with you all, so then I skimmed them and highlighted them again. Both times I read them, I was kind of just like, where are we? It would be like, I got arrested, but listen to what happened 8 years ago, but then 5 years ago, but then when I was a kid. Like, it felt like I was just talking to them, not reading a book, if that makes sense. Man, y'all are quiet tonight. It's quiet around here. Are you just engrossed in what I'm saying? Are they written like the authors expected the readers to know the movie already? They were written like the authors expected them to know them already. Like, this didn't read as a book for a stranger. This read as like the emails I send my therapist. So let's get into the Sophisticated Hustler first. I'll read you the back of it, which is on the screen. Rosalind Keough was born and raised in a small county 10 minutes from Manhattan. Not coming from much, she worked hard to support herself. She attended college at Berkeley in New York City. Is there a Berkeley in New York City? From slinging plates at a local diner to swinging on the poles in the Big Apple, she got into dancing at 17 years old. She eventually learned the art of hustling from a young age through all of her life experiences. Rosie always dreamed big, constantly wanting better. At the age of 27, when the game had changed, she changed the game, which landed her behind bars. This is a blessing in disguise, which she did not realize until later. She has learned many life lessons the hard way. With every curveball thrown at her, she always remained true to herself, remaining undefeated. She learned the power of resilience, leadership, and the importance of family. Like, it's kind of a whole lot of nothing. You know what I mean? I just realized I forgot to put my shit in the oven and it's been on for I don't know how long. That's so real. Where was I? Being an amazing mother to her daughter has been the most important job she's ever taken on. Maintaining a happy and healthy lifestyle while being a stay-at-home mom has been quite rewarding for Rosalind and her family. After years of hiding from her past, she's discovered that a movie inspired by her life was in the making. Instead of allowing Hollywood to narrate a version of who she truly is, she decided to take charge and tell her version of what happened. Meet the sophisticated hustler Rosalind Keough. So that's the background, or the back of the book, of kind of like who she is. So I'm going to kind of go just read through the chapter titles, and then I'll read my annotations. Chapter 1, The Early Hustle, Money Hungry, Training Day, Liquid Courage, The Stripping Therapist, Easy Money, The Get Money Crew, Buyer's Remorse, Time to Go Fishing, The Hustlers at Scores, which is the name of that article. And then the last bit is about the sophisticated hustler. The last bit was honestly my favorite part, but let's go ahead and just skim through some of these little annotations. You know what I was actually thinking I kind of need for this? I want like one of those dock cameras that like elementary school teachers have to like show kids shit. I don't really know what people use those for. She did get a foreword from the screenwriter and director. No one is more excited to read this book than I am. This is what I think. It seemed like Rosalind is pretty smart, and she was like, there's this movie, how can I capitalize this for myself? But I will say, she does lack the follow-through, because it says rosalindkeough.com, and it says it's a Squarespace that hasn't been updated. Like, it's like, this person needs to renew their account. You get like an error message. So I feel like she had the vision there for like how to take this to the next level. It just like didn't really shake out that way. So anyway, no one is more excited to read this book than I am. Rosie's there and back again story is fascinating as it is inspiring. The book is full of insight, reflection, and personal growth. Rosie had written a tale of survival, excess, and the American dream with a keen perspective and raw intelligence. This book is for anyone who has fallen and gotten back up again. Whether you've read the article or seen the movie, if you want the bigger picture, look no further than The Sophisticated Hustler by Rosalind Keough. So, like, they're very much saying, like, this is for people that have seen the movie. Does this have a publisher? No, it doesn't. So it's self-published. And the subtitle really did piss me off. When the alpha female takes on Wall Street. And that's kind of the theme of this book, is she kind of paints herself as like, I was a stripper, but then I became sophisticated. And like, you just were a stripper, which is like fine. And she kind of makes herself believe that she was a business person. And like, I'm sorry, beloved, that never happened. Like, unfortunately, that just never happened. And like, I hate to say it, that literally just never happened. Like, you were never a business person. Like, I'm so, like, I don't even mean to be, like, demeaning or insulting. That's just kind of the truth. She also got a forward from, it's Jessica Pressler, not Kessler, the woman who wrote the famous article about them. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's very long, but this is what I highlighted. Of course, there's much more to Rosie's story than that. As you will read in her own words in this very fine book, which I can't wait for the world to read, Rosie and I had our ups and downs, which she never really talks about in the book. But in the end, at the risk of aligning myself with the former customer I mentioned above, the sucker referred to in this book as a Gary, we will get into Gary, I have to agree. Rosie is a special person, and there's a person in there that wants to do good. It's a fucked up story, she concluded on the day of our first meeting, but at least there's a happy ending. I said, yeah, she said, pointing to her daughter, this is the happy ending, which was also in the article. Hi, Stream, I got a new job and I'm moving to Tokyo. Oh my God. Also had an abysmal quit interview with the current place. Quitting a job is like, a lot of people love it. I kind of hate it. So this is the quote from the beginning of chapter 1, and I wrote lots of repeats. This is what she writes. This is her own quote on this page. People have questions, like what made her do the things she did? Why didn't she make better choices? Why did she choose this road? What was she thinking? I can understand it. Hell, even I'm intrigued. So she says, she starts the book, first and foremost, I'm a New Yorker. She talks about no matter the players, the circumstances, or the obstacles, I made the money, but it's easy to get sucked in. And so this quote is right here. It's on the same page. Like, it's not like at the end of each chapter, like the most impactful words. Even that I wouldn't love. She's saying, now I'm taking the opportunity to tell my story. On my terms, I'll take you into an exclusive tour of my life. We all grew up in a society where men run shit. She talks about how her mother is Chinese. Her family speaks a Chinese dialect called Hokkien. Her maternal grandparents migrated to Cambodia from China, and all of her grandma's children were born and raised in Cambodia. They had 5 girls and 3 boys. As they used to tell it, my grandparents were pretty well off, successful business owners. I heard of them having nannies, drivers, and housekeepers. It always sounded great to me. Hearing these stories as a kid, I would sit and daydream of how my life would be great if we never left Cambodia. But in reality, all of that luxury came to a crashing halt in the early 1980s. Then she starts talking about the Vietnam War, and then there was a dictator who took over Cambodia and turned it into a communist country, and a bunch of people went to China, and they were stereotyped as capitalist. So, like, little bit of a red flag about her family, because, like, what are you talking about? Like, not that being a war refugee is a red flag, but her being like, our life was amazing. They had nannies, they were so rich, and then out of nowhere, they just had to leave. Like, I feel like I'm missing part of that story, and I think she is too. Like, I don't think she's hiding anything. I don't think anybody is. I think we're just not getting the full story. Her family was sponsored by a Christian family in Texas, and then they moved from Texas to New York. This is a picture of her when she was a baby. I do appreciate the color printing. I really, really don't like when in books they print the colors in black, or they print the pictures in black and white instead of color, because, like, it's the year 2025. We have printers. So this book is 93 pages. I'm not reading it. Like, I've already gone through a fair amount. I'm just skimming it. But honestly, we could read the whole thing. She said she was really discriminated against in school. She said she wasn't Asian enough for the Asians, wasn't American enough for the Americans. She lived in a predominantly Irish neighborhood and got called a lot of slurs. She said she spent a lot of time around family. Her extended family is huge. Most of them are boys. She was the only girl, so she was, like, always trying to keep up with boys. That's, like, very true of her childhood, always trying to keep up with boys. Her and her grandmother would collect bottles and cans, and they would make about $20 for a full cart, and she said that was, like, her first hustle was with her grandma. And then she got a job at a donut shop. She was helping her mom there, and then... Oh, apparently this is what a teacher said about her. She said, I'll never forget what the superintendent said at my expulsion meeting. He said, we've never had any problems with Oriental students before. This is a first. I'm shocked. So I think that that's really, like, encapsulating kind of her childhood and what she went through. I heard it's a similar energy with why a lot of people in the U.S. from Cuba are super Republican. I was thinking that. I used to live in Miami, and there's a lot of Republicans in Miami that are from, a lot of them from Cuba, but other places as well. And I just didn't know if y'all were really ready to have that conversation or not. Honestly, it could be another stream. So then she ended up moving. She was, like, hustling from the time she was a kid. She would buy cases of candy at Costco and then sell them to other kids at school. So they ended up moving to a not as nice neighborhood, and she switched to a different school. And she said the new school, even though it was a worse school, it was very diverse, which she really liked, because she said that she wasn't experiencing the discrimination. But she said her parents did not like that some of her new friends were black, because they were like, no, we want you at the white school. And she said, guess what, Mom? Those black girls taught me how to drop it like it's hot. Oh my God, it's not funny, but it kind of is. And she said, watching her mom struggle, she realized that she never wanted to be a broke woman. She said her mom is not really a role model for her in that way. Even though she never gave me much attention, seeing her in that state made me want to work hard, buy her a house, and have her live with me and help me raise my future children. So her and her mom, this is kind of... I'm breaking out so bad. I hate when I accidentally scratch myself and on a zit. It's like the worst. As a Hispanic woman, I've had this community many times. For our community, religion is often a part of the appeal. How do you even fill 93 pages with this? No, literally. Like, this book could have been a podcast. So she says her mom is not a strong role model, but she doesn't hate her, it seems like. 3 days, this is another one of her quotes. 3 days after my 14th birthday, I landed a job at Dunkin' Donuts making $5.15 per hour. Finally, I had money to pay for my own nails, my own cell phone bill, and help my grandmother pay the gas and electric bill. She said as a teenager, she was obsessed with the show Cribs, MTV Cribs, if you know, you know. She said, if you watch a show like MTV Cribs, you can either become a hater and say, why them and not me? Think to yourself, if he or she can do it, I can do it too. Or you can ignore the rich and say to yourself, that house isn't that nice anyway. And she said she always was by the mindset, if he can do it or if she can do it, so can I. Her manager at Dunkin' Donuts would let her work extra hours, even though it was illegal because he like knew her situation. And she said this was her first job where she noticed the power that she had over men. So she said that men would flirt with her all the time. There was a guy who worked at a BMW dealership down the road. He would tip her really well. And she jokingly asked him for $500 one time, and then he just gave it to her. And yeah, like it kind of seemed like from the jump that was her vibe. Then she said, now that I look back, he was grooming me to trust him. I felt uncomfortable about the whole thing and decided to look for another job so I wouldn't have to see him again, but you better believe I took the money. Nice. This book could have been a podcast as a super slogan for your book club segment. But like some of the books we're going to read are good. Like, well, I'm going to read. So then she got a job at Foot Locker, which she liked because she could make a lot more money. She made a friend there. And then she got a job at the New York City Diner. And she said that was her real first hustle because that's a job where she was making tips. She said, if the bill was supposed to be $150, I would write a $50 check and the guests would give me a $50 tip. We both made out in the end and everyone was happy. At the age of 16, I was pulling in about $800 per week. So like she was making so much money at this diner job because she was like basically stealing from her employer, but like whatever, I guess. So she's basically saying, if you didn't catch that, she would take things off the person's bill and then they would tip her extra, which is a really good strategy to make money actually. She said it was the summer of 2000. I was working a lot. She was juggling crazy shifts, going to school, doing homework. Like it was like just a 24-hour cycle. And she said she never wanted to be home. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 people. That was less than 1,000 square feet, which that sounds horrible. And then she said that the type of crowd at the diner when she was working late at night, they would get drunk people and dancers from Lace, a strip club that was nearby, and they would tip her a lot and then kind of like groomed or recruited her to come work at Lace. She said, growing up, I followed the show G-String Divas and I saw how much money they were making, but I didn't think any of the girls were pretty. I was decent looking, better looking than them at least. Maybe I could do something with that. Of course, at 16 years old, I was underage. That's too bad, one of the diner guys said, but a seed had been planted. So she did end up working underage, but I don't think for them. Like she ended up going somewhere else with a fake ID. This is another thing I really noticed in this book is like her putting down other girls and other strippers and being like, oh, well, I was sophisticated. You can tell she really prides herself on being like a better and like cleaner. I'm using the word cleaner because she uses the word dirty. But this is one thing she said. I never danced completely naked. Some girls wore skimpy dresses and see-through stuff. That wasn't my style. I liked to wear dresses that left something to the imagination. From that point forward, the sophisticated hustler was born. Like, okay. I just feel like she's kind of giving shame. Then she puts this picture of herself. She says 18-year-old Rosie, and it's like a very sexy picture of her on the beach in a bikini. I wonder what this beach is. She said, I was no stranger to hard work. I'm about 16 or 17. It's 2001. And she attended a audition at that same strip club, Lace. And she used a friend's ID to work there. Girl, do we realize we are groomed? Yeah. So even though the guys in the diner were like, you should go work at Lace, she was like, oh, I'm underage. And then she went anyway. She danced, she auditioned. From that point, the sophisticated hustler, her own quote. She said that this is when she decided to drop out of high school and get her GED instead. She later attended a college with her GED. She said, I walked out of Lace as an underage baby, but this is a typo in her book. She means to say, I walked into Lace, an underage baby, but walked out a fully grown woman. But she said, I walked out. So that's what tells me, like, there was not a publisher involved in this, which, like, I'm not judging. I have typos. If you read my Substack, I have typos. Like, it's amateur writing. Like, I am one, so I can recognize it. And then she said she wanted to go dance in New York City rather than in, like, the suburbs because she would make more money. But she said she was really intimidated because the fees were really, really high in New York. You have to pay like $250 a night to the DJ, to the club, whatever. And she said she was used to paying like $30 to the club, so kind of intimidating to come into that. Then she got a job at a place called Flash Dancers. It was directly across from the studio where they filmed the David Letterman show. She said there were as many as 9 girls working on any given night, so she really had to, like, change her vibe and change the way that she hustled to try and make more money. She said it was mainly a table dance kind of club, and she said it was always packed, so it was fairly easy to make a quick $1,000. Each song would play for 3 minutes, $20 per song. I'd always get $100 worth of dances out of 10 men. She said that her superpower was engaging in effortless conversation. Whatever that fucking means. She said 99% of the time, I just got paid to talk. Okay, sure. Let's go with that. Like, it seems like she has a lot of cognitive dissonance around her work, which is understandable. She said she made her monthly tuition in a week. Again, I was the sophisticated hustler. I was diligent. She said she would tell guys, like, oh, I've been hurt before. I don't trust guys. She calls her customers custies, which I find interesting. She said, my regulars usually didn't have a lot of money, maybe $100K to their names, $10K in the bank, or they had 401ks they'd empty out just for me. I say only $100K because there were high rollers who came into the club. I'm talking CEOs, men who would easily blow 5 to 10K a night. That's another thing that I noticed in both of their books is, like, kind of bragging about how rich their customers were. And like, oh, this guy loved me. He was so rich. Like, name dropping without name dropping, because they don't name them, but they're like a CEO of a major sneaker company, a CEO of a major advertising company, things like that. She thought these people were friendly. No, I'm like kind of disturbed. That's why I wanted to show you all this. These books are why I wanted to come up with this. Where was I? She said, and then she like talks shit about other girls for doing the same thing. She says, at work, there were girls who bragged about their customers buying them cars, houses, apartments in Central Park West. And I was like, damn, why couldn't I meet a guy like that? And she said, I was happy to use my tragic past, playing the broken and battered girl. I never aimed to be a home wrecker, blah, blah, blah. Custies sounds so gross. No, it sounds like crusties. She said, I'll be damned if I'm someone's sloppy seconds. Like, a lot of this book was her telling herself how valuable she was, and I loved to be a part of that. Then she said, Alejandra, one of my clients from Queens. She uses the word clients a lot. She said it was a wealth management company. She said, I'd take his belt, tie it around his neck, and walk him on all fours like a dog. Then she says, meet Gary Johnson, a guy from the Midwest suburbs of Chicago who worked in the publishing industry. She said she thought it was a red flag that he was single in his 40s. What do you mean it's a red flag to be single in your like, mind you, she's like 22 at this point. Gary understood me because he had previously dated a girl at Scores. He was in love with me. Gary was that customer, every girl's dream. I could make at least $15,000 to $3,000 every single time I saw him. She said, my philosophy is men are hunters. Play the player, and in the end, you win. Leave emotions at the door. You have a job to do, but I knew Gary was a gold mine. She said, it kept going until one day I woke up with a guilty conscience. She said, eventually Gary stopped coming to the club. Where is a Quick Trip parking lot with a red flag for alpha female? She said she had a black book of clientele. Gary ended up with a Russian dancer who had an affair and got pregnant, and then the baby wasn't his. Like, a lot of it kind of seems just like shock value. Like, that's very much the writing style, is shock value, and I'd like to point out we're about halfway done. Yeah, I know. Then this other guy, Mitch, he was an iron worker from Queens. He seemed nice in the beginning. They all do. He would tell me stories about his ex-girlfriend who was also a dancer. He says, I'm sure they were only dating in his mind. She had lots of like boyfriends that weren't actual boyfriends. This part I really didn't like. Unlike many of the girls I worked with over the years, I wasn't willing to do anything for a buck. Dancers like me who hustled for our money frowned upon dirty girls, the prostitutes and half hookers who would go the extra mile with sexual favors. We didn't allow them into our circle because we had no respect for them and they had no respect for the game. I don't like that she's talking about other women like that are really like, anyone that's engaging in sex work should be respected, and I think it's gross that someone who's a stripper is, like, talking down on girls that are doing other forms of sex work. Like, gross. Like, you can tell she has so much cognitive dissonance around her job. We're now into chapter 6, Easy Money. Are you all liking this? The views are very low tonight, which is fine. I just want to know if the people here are enjoying this. What else could possibly happen? So she said, living the fast life caught up. She said she picked up a nasty cocaine habit, but she said she was also addicted to money, which was even harder to break than the cocaine. She said shopping is an instant gratification for her, buying Chanel bags and Christian Louboutin shoes. She said, since the rules at Flash Dancers were so strict, I needed to find a way to work less without having to pay fines since I slipped into a depression and drank heavily. There were times I drank so much that I couldn't work. She said that she ended up actually getting robbed one time. They forced her way into her apartment. She said that she didn't live in a very good neighborhood, but she had so much designer stuff, so she felt like put a target on her back. So she said, this is her logic after getting moved. She said, I cared about my own life to move from New York City to the suburbs. I wanted to be in close proximity of people who had their own money and could afford nice things. Her, like, obsession with wealth and status is really what gets me, and I think that's why she talks down on the other girls. It's because it's, like, her obsession with status. She said, by now I was about 24 years old. I was considered a veteran. Her name at the club, now she's at Hustlers, was Akira. She said, at Lace and Flash Dancers, it was every woman for herself, but Hustlers had more of a team environment. This is where she brings up Samantha, who she refers to as, I think Camille is who she's referring to as Samantha. Like, they made it hard to follow. I wish they had texted each other and at least used the same code names. That would have made this a lot easier for me. She said, I quickly noticed that Claudia, Camille, and Casey were top earners, and I was desperate to learn how they kept customers in the champagne rooms for hours and why Lorenzo, the host, always called them for his clients' needs. And the host is basically, they call him like the matchmaker of the strip club. Like when a client comes in, they go and get them a girl for like the private rooms. So if the host doesn't like you, you're kind of fucked. But didn't they utilize sex workers in their scheme? They did. And she talks about those girls really nasty too. She said, dancers like me who hustled for our money frowned upon dirty girls, the prostitutes and half hookers who would go the extra mile for sexual favors. We didn't allow them in our circles because we had no respect for them. Like her same quote, and also really mean. And she said, I saw it happen all the time, all too often. A good, solid, regular custy would get paired with a dirty girl. He'd get a blowjob or sex, and after that, he'd be tainted. Dirty girls pissed me off, but I also felt bad for them. And then later, she like yaps about how she doesn't like them. And then she says, what I came to know is that a lot of these women had been violated and hurt, and so they were numb. I get it. So like she does eventually come around to some sort of resolution. Crusty. So she said she has to tip the host. Lorenzo was a clean host. She said she was getting really easy money at this time. She said at one point, reading up on Heidi Fleiss's story, I was tempted to become a madam. We know about that. She said that a lot of them were doing drugs. She said easily we could have gotten busted for possession, but it never happened because the cops did come to the club. She said, while I was at Flash Dancers, I started to become a full-blown addict. So you see what I mean, how it's going out of order? She said like, oh, now I'm working at Hustlers, but now she's going back to when she worked at Flash Dancers and was addicted to cocaine. Like, it's just not in order. She said, even that got boring. It was time for a new addiction. That's when things really got wild.
I met Camille through my friend Claudia, who encouraged me to go from flash dancers to hustlers. They were the ones who knew how the game really worked. This is when Howard Stern was talking about scores a lot. She said, I have over 30 sharks, which we called big money makers. One of my high rollers was the owner of a major sneaker company. Back then, men who went to strip clubs in New York were bosses and had plenty of money to throw around. I loved it. I didn't have any customers with nasty or odd fetishes, although Camille did. Like the constant putting down of the other women. But one thing that was definitely true was many of them in high power positions wanted to be submissive at the end of the day. I was in no position to judge them. I just wanted my money. So doing drugs is cool now. End of the book. A cool lesson. So this is what one of her little quotes from later. Before I left the scene to have my daughter and focus on my family, I'd been a part of a little clique. I guess you could call us the Get Money crew. We made mad money and kept our circle tight. I was the only Asian girl. Aside from me, the other girls were either Spanish or Caucasian. While ethnicity didn't matter to us dancers, it might have made a difference with the customers. That's one thing that both of them talked about, is how you need to have a diverse group because every customer has a different vibe that they're into, and like to be successful you need to work with other girls, because if he's not into your vibe you can introduce him to a friend, and like you scratch my back, I scratch yours is very much, it seems like, the vibe that is needed in this industry. I don't remember being this frustrated by Rosalind during the first lesson on this topic. I'm so bothered right now. Exactly, that's why I needed to read you all the books, because I was like, okay, why are you acting like that? Children's books have more plot development than this 93-page chapter book. Yeah, again, we are more than half done. Then she starts talking about these new girls at Hustlers. She said there was this girl, Mia, whose boyfriend was pimping her out. Then there was Natalie. She was at Camille's bachelorette party when Camille and I were forming the crew. She said she wanted girls that did not have major cosmetic surgery done. Natural beauty is priceless and goes a long way, which I feel like is shady to Camille, who does have a lot of work done. The night I met the sneaker CEO, he was leaving the men's bathroom. You see what I mean? Like, now we brought up the CEO from like 6 pages ago. He had a surfer look. He was wearing an expensive hoodie, which I knew because I had the expensive hoodie. He even gave the girls lap dances. He can probably have any woman, but they later found out he was married and had a mistress. He would come to the club a lot. They would get like $3,000 per visit. And this was an indicator of how clients were feeling about sharing the wealth, if they would bring their friends into the room and the client would be cool with it. Then she said it was 2008, the economy was in trouble, and so was the strip club business. That is right around the time that she got pregnant as well. She said dating men when you're leading into this lifestyle can be very tricky. I had trust issues to begin with. She said in the 5 years she had been with her boyfriend, they had had ups and downs, but at the time we were in a good place. Things were aligning, or so I thought. And I was burned out. I was 25 years old. I'd been in the industry for nearly a decade. I was beginning to feel like a scumbag, walking into my nice home in the suburbs at the same time that regular folks were on their way to work. So I decided it was time to leave it all behind, to let go of my independence and allow him to be the primary breadwinner. At no point in time does she say what his job was, but on more than one occasion, she's like, I decided to stop and rely on him. And like, what? I do not understand the relationship with the father of her daughter, her boyfriend. I don't know if they're married. Like, it's very confusing. She says a lot of negative things about him, but then also is like, we ended up working it all out, which is crazy to me. We're enjoying it. Thank you for reading the real life brain rot. It's a read aloud. So it was a challenging decision for me, but I passed my client list to my other dancer friends, and they celebrated their 5-year anniversary by getting engaged. And then she said almost immediately my boyfriend became an asshole and started sleeping around. She said my daughter was my 4th pregnancy. She had had a few abortions before because she said having a baby wasn't at the top of her priority list, and she hated birth control, which, like, that's real as fuck. She said, between the lifestyle I had and my own suicidal thoughts, I don't need more chemicals messing with my head. And then she said by the time she figured out what her boyfriend was up to, she was 3 months pregnant. So she said she couldn't get an abortion. They told her she would have to leave the state, and she decided not to. She said she had gestational diabetes. This is what killed me. She said, I'd never been over 110 pounds, and I was 160 pounds. Like, A, you were pregnant, and B, I'm 160 pounds right now. Like... She's saying it like 160 pounds is like a crazy ass weight to be. And like, I don't think it's weird to gain 50 pounds when you're pregnant. Is that weird? I feel like that happens to a lot of people. Whatever. She said, after I had my daughter, I was vulnerable and felt alone, but something told me, you've got this. I made a declaration to myself, lose the baby weight, get back to work, make as much money as I can, get out and put a down payment on a house and start a business. So she said, so I hired a fitness trainer for myself and a nanny for my daughter. Where'd you get the money for that? Like, I thought you said you had no money. Had you been saving it, I guess? Because she was making a ton. She said, by no means did I want to make dancing a lifetime career. I was a mommy by day and a madam by night. I think it's crazy for someone to weigh 100 pounds. Same. She said, I would come home from work, go to bed at 6 a.m., get up at 11, get my daughter to preschool by noon, take my nanny home. Then while my daughter was at school, I would run errands or nap, then pick her up by 3 p.m. My time with her was precious. She was such a happy baby. And this is what kills me. She said, getting dressed for work felt good. I finally felt like a boss. I would dress in black slacks, a white blouse, and a black blazer with my black patent leather red bottoms. No longer was I going to work in sweatsuits and leggings to put on 6-inch stilettos and a sexy dress. I was going to work in business attire, and it felt amazing. I finally felt accomplished and proud of myself for making it so far and coming a long way. The making it so far was just switching from stripping to scamming. Because at this point, what she's not explaining, that she will explain later, is that her job in their little ring, because she has like more of a natural non-stripper look, was to dress up in office clothes, hang out at bars and be like, I had such a long day. And then flirt with the guys and be like, do you want to do something crazy? Let's go to a strip club. I've never been. So like she was literally pretending to be an office employee. And then I think she also convinced herself that she was an office employee. I would have more respect for a stripper. Like I respect a stripper more than a scammer. And I'll say that. I don't care. She said, I really felt like a businesswoman and the boss of my own company. When my neighbors and friends asked me what I did, I told them I owned a modeling agency in the city and I was in the process of starting my agency, but instead I decided to do a consignment business. Camille and I not only made money from cash and checks, we also dabbled with some shopping with the customer's permission, of course. What do you mean with the customer's permission? You literally got arrested because it wasn't with the customer's permission. Just get a corporate job. Like, she yearns to be like a marketing assistant is literally what she's yearning for. Like, and she has good sales skills. She should be selling like pharma shit or some evil job like that. That's at least legal. She said, a mobile credit card terminal was necessary for some of the work we would do outside the club. Sometimes we couldn't get the customer out of his hotel room. So she literally admits that they had a mobile credit card terminal and would like swipe the credit cards even outside of the club, which is ultimately what got them in trouble. She said, our operation was expanding. We were operating both out of hotel rooms and multiple gentlemen's clubs. Everyone wanted to jump on the money train. I was usually the driver. I drove a 2010 white Escalade with a black leather interior. Like, even now she's bragging. Camille, my partner in crime, would be in the front passenger seat, either booking hotel rooms or calling and texting the host to get the champagne room ready. My truck was big, but I refused to take the baby seat out. If you're a mom, you know that's a pain in the butt, and I could never get it strapped in as tightly as my child's father did, so I just left it for safety reasons. She's unclear if at what points she's living with the father of her child. It's very, very unclear. She said, work never stopped. Like, they would be partying all night, and then during the day, she would have to deal with credit card disputes and, like, be on the phone with the company. She said, no one had to deal with the credit card company except Camille and I, but mostly me. She said, the ugly in me came out when I had to deal with work and money. I didn't want to answer Camille. So she kind of does admit to being a bitch, which is real. Kept that baby seat strapped. And she did say that, like, because so many people were in her car, sometimes other strippers would sit in the baby seat. She said, the chargebacks and all of it was worth it. They were making a lot of money. Since then, it's been my attitude about life. No matter what comes my way, I've got this. For the next 2 years, I basically raised my daughter independently. She says now that she was 27, her goals changed. She did not want to be a stripper after the age of 30. And her and the Get Money crew, this is where she talks more about that. They had this clique and they would scratch your back, you scratch mine. She said, when my daughter was 9 months old, I found out the girls I'd been working with jumped ship. So she just backtracked again, again with the backtrack. I'm trying to be on your side and support you, girl. She talks about Howard Stern again. It was a difficult transition. My friends were being shady with me. So now she's going back to the time when she first came back to the club, why they started scamming. Okay. This is another one of her quotes that she's quoting. The customers would be so drunk and doped up that they couldn't remember the night. I understood their pain. I've been there, out in the club popping bottles, and I have a $1,500 tab at the end of the night, and I'm left sitting there like, what the fuck? So I felt their pain. However, their credit card troubles weren't my problem. You were swiping the card. You gave them MDMA and you were swiping the card. What do you mean it's not your problem? And this is literally what she says. She said, needless to say, we preferred our custies relaxed. Meet my superstar, Molly. She was a fierce co-host when we entertained with the custies. The men used drugs while they drank, causing them to get limp dick. The girls weren't there to perform sexual favors anyway, but if they left, the night was over. So they gave them Molly to keep the party going, because the longer they stay in the club, the more times they can charge the card. Who the hell is Molly? MDMA. Ecstasy in a powder form. So she's fully just saying it. She said that they would also give Valium, and the customers thought it was Viagra because it was a little pill with a little blue pill with a V on it. She said, I took the Valium to help me from choking someone out. So her and the girls are taking Valium. They're giving the guys MDMA. Some of the guys are taking the Valium because they think it's a Viagra. We crushed up Molly and mixed it in people's cocaine. This is a direct quote. I'm not skipping a line. We crushed up Molly and mixed it into his cocaine. No table dances, no dirtiness, no drama, just pure fun. Someone doing cocaine does not mean they're going to consent to doing Molly. People can want to do drugs and not want to do other ones. We begin consistently mixing Molly into the customer's cocaine and swiping their cards for every cent possible. They would get the guy's credit card company on the phone and have him verify his identity. They're making thousands of dollars. She says, according to the queen bee of the group, who was very bossy and controlling, when I would stay home with depression, it meant that I wasn't being supportive. What do you think her former coworkers think of her exposing like this? I don't even know. Again, this is the definition of the sophisticated hustler. She said, I was versatile and able to adapt to my environment. Jesus Christ. Camille is still the main girl, but Camille turned from a dancer into a licensed masseuse. She said, some clubs hire female massage therapists, masseuses to enhance the customer experience. Camille was working with a partner, but Michelle, the partner, never had her own customers. Michelle made a light go off in Camille's mind. She talks a lot of shit about Camille and her relationships with the other girls. She said, for the sake of clarity, I wasn't a prostitute. I never had sex in exchange for money. They are not one and the same. There is a difference. Again, with the hating on the quote-unquote dirty girls. Some guys said they wanted to get fucked. Well, they certainly got fucked, but not in the way that they imagine. They're giving the customers ketamine now, and then she gets into the credit card problems are just buyer's remorse. It's not my problem. This is what fucking kills me. I literally drew a question mark. Why does she have this picture of her with the bull on Wall Street? Babe, you never worked on Wall Street. You never did. It never happened. It simply never happened. She said, Hustlers was becoming a ghost town after the recession, and girls were doing sexual favors in exchange for $50. Now she's going back to the previous story of why they started doing this. She said, We're talking CFOs, CEOs, Wall Street hedge fund guys. I'd bring them all to us. This is where she talks about the fishing. The art of fishing meant dressing and acting like the part. So she said, I'm no longer competing with dancers, I'm competing with escorts. She said, in these establishments, I would wear slacks and a blazer, keeping a very natural, everyday look. So this is what I mean, and I literally wrote, she believed it. Like, she believed her own lies. She believed that she was a business owner. She said, this time I wasn't dancing. I was a consignment shop owner who also did marketing and promotions for restaurant groups. I had business cards and a separate cell phone. I had to be very precise. And she would basically just meet the guys at restaurants and pretend to be them. And then she said, would say I had a stressful day at work. I wanted to blow off some steam. Maybe she was doing speed as well. She said that she would judge guys by like their watches and stuff to see if they were going to be like worth bringing there. She said, I figured if a guy can spend $100,000 on a watch, he can spend money on a night out with a hot girl. So once they found a high roller, she would pretend she'd never been to a strip club before, and she told them that she liked girls. She said she would get their credit card and ID and give it to Lorenzo, the host, for him to run. She said, in my eyes, I was the hero, coming in to save everyone's pockets by providing an opportunity for everyone to make money. I did very well working alone. But then once she was back at Hustlers, her and Camille, which is Samantha, got together a little bit and started working together. They said, some girls tried to work with us. They weren't able to contribute them, so they were our workers and our runners. This is where she gets into hiring the dirty girls as well. She says, if dancers made $40,000, Camille and I would split 30, and the other 10 was split between the girls that worked for us that night. Camille and I were co-hosts for Lorenzo at this point. We had a love and hate relationship. We were frenemies, but she says they were considered equals. They did go on multiple breaks. Like, they would work together, get pissed off, stop. Work together, get pissed off, stop. This girl, Erin, who got fired from Flashdance, joins them. She said there was this woman in her 40s named Sonia who was like a veteran stripper who said she had a multi-million-dollar apartment on Central Park West that a client bought for her. No, she's saying she was lying. She literally said, I would tell them I like girls. I'm a great actress. Maybe you're not acting. She said, sometimes, where was I? That ensured there was no waiting period, and Matt had no time to think or change his mind. I've had guys hop out of my car and leave when they get a bad feeling. Sometimes I'd enable the child locks on my truck to prevent that from happening, then blame the locks on having to keep my daughter safe. I had to stay ahead of the game. However, walking into the club was their decision. She said, I tried to stay in the private room. He was drunk and high off cocaine. She said that her method was to bleed the customers a little bit at a time. Camille, Samantha wanted all the money up front. So Rosalind, this is what I think, like, Rosalind's not stupid. She's like good at sales, and she saw the value of like building a customer over time rather than charging his entire credit card balance on the first night. So her and Samantha would fight about that a lot. She said another customer was buying an MLB team, again with the name dropping. Then she said, we recruited women from either the strip club or Backpage to entertain our customers. Our operation ensured their safety. She said, I treated these girls so good. I picked them up from their home. I guaranteed them $500 to $1,000 per night. Meanwhile, she's making like 30 in some nights. She really presents it like she had respect for these prostitutes. She said, some will say I was their pimp and took their power. However, I didn't see it that way. Who said that? You said that. I was being Captain Save-A-Ho, and they always had a choice. The amount of times in this book, she takes accountability off of herself, and she's like, well, they had a choice. They had a choice. They had a choice. She talks about a bunch of the prostitutes that she hired and how they came from these horrible situations. They were getting beaten by their boyfriends, and she's like, I treated them so good, but a lot of them would still quit. She literally says, you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. Everyone isn't worth saving. Some don't even want to be saved. And then she said they're doing more of the fishing. She said, here are the 4 components. She literally like lays it out. Here's the 4 components of Operation Sophistication. Get customers in the door, get customers to spend at least $10,000 per night, keep the customers interchanged, deal with chargebacks. Then she talks about this real estate investor from Nevada. She said that Samantha never put her money in a bank account. She always did check cashing. She said if Samantha would have been the CEO, I would have been the CFO. Samantha kind of managed the girls, and Rosalind kind of managed the money in the credit card companies. This is a fun stream, but also I feel icky. No, it really is icky. This is also what kills me. She's talking about this real estate developer. He always stayed at the Waldorf Astoria, which wasn't the nicest hotel, but it was a classic. And then she talks about how they would bring the girls in one at a time, because if they bring in like 5 girls at once, the guy gets overwhelmed. She said, Camille and I were like the dream team, Kobe and Shaq. We were even fair to the dirty girls. Once we squeeze a customer for everything we possibly could, we would send in the dirty girls at the end to give the customer whatever sexual favor they were hoping for. They would get something like $500 out of the deal. This way, everybody made money. We never stole anything, which is not true. We paid the girls a decent amount for the money per night, and they were satisfied with that. It was all business for us, and if it was a legit business, Camille would have been the CEO, and I would have been the CFO. They were independent contractors at the club, so they could work as much or as little as they wanted. This is another quote that she quoted herself on. I called the credit card company, the custody verified his information, then he allowed me to get on the phone and take over from there. That was her main role, was like bringing the customers into the club as fishing by looking more businessy, and then she would deal with a lot of like the credit card companies and the financial stuff. My ass itches so hard every time she says dirty girls when her own behavior seems to be the dirtiest part of this story. No, literally, like, if someone's just being a prostitute, to me that's more ethical than drugging and stealing money from your clients. Then she starts talking about that the strip club managers were horrible and they say they want a drug-free environment, but they don't. Then she starts talking more about Camille, how Camille is in her 40s now. She was so well known. We kept 4 girls working for us at a time. She said, I was harsh with them, maybe even downright mean. What they were doing was serious and there was no room for silly hiccups. My thoughts were, keep your shit together, get the money and go home. And then she starts talking about, I'm going to be brief on this. She says, once we hired a transgender, Samantha also talks about working with a transgender woman. Samantha talks about this woman in a respectful manner where Samantha says, like, I respect this fellow woman as a sex worker. Samantha is much kinder to sex workers. Like, she's like, this is everyone's role. I don't do that role, but it's an important role. Like, Samantha talks about her colleagues in a much more respectful manner. But this is what Rosalind says about this transgender woman. She said, once we hired a transgender, she doesn't say woman, she just says a transgender, who sent me pictures of the client with the dildo in his ass. See, that's the kind of bullshit I don't need to know about or see. Just do the job and get out. The way you choose to get down was solely your business. So she's like mad at this woman for taking these photos, but like immediately says, but the pictures did come in handy. If the customer threatened us with a chargeback on their credit card, Camille would threaten them with the pictures. It's a dirty game, but we had to protect ourselves. Like, you're talking shit about this woman. You're mad at her for doing this, but then you're directly saying her doing that benefited your business model, if you even want to call it that. She said she felt like Camille was acting like she was invincible. She was doing like super designer flashy stuff everywhere. She said she wanted to keep a tight-knit operation. She said this was no longer a sophisticated hustle. She was going to stop this and move, basically. She met another dirty girl, and Camille loved to bring in these strays. Camille trusted way too many people. And then she basically says that, where's the part about her moving? Or am I misremembering that? No, I think that might have been Samantha's book about moving. But anyway, she says she was just about to leave, and then the arrest happened. And she said, I'll never forget, my lawyer once told me, Rosie, there's no honor among thieves. And that's why she said, oh, I was right. She said, My lawyer once told me, Rosie, there's no honor among thieves. I learned this the hard way. I knew some shit was about to go down and I wanted out. This whole thing was getting out of hand. Word got out that I was quitting and moving to Miami. That's when I got picked up by the authorities. So she's like, I was about to quit right before we got arrested. She said, besides I was the only one with a toddler to think about, Camille had a son who was 18 at the time. And because her lawyer said there's no honor among thieves, that's why she decided to do an agreement with the government, and she said she cannot say too much else because of it. She said she doesn't like that she was portrayed as the bad guys. She says that her and Camille are both alpha females, whatever. Then she starts talking about, we were portrayed as the bad guys. Many of our clients were already drug users and repeat customers prepared to splurge on entertainment. They sniffed cocaine and drank alcohol just like everyone else. All we did was slip them a little extra by mixing in Molly with the cocaine they were already using. We didn't twist any arms or place any guns to anyone's head. In my mind, it was all consensual. This is what came with the territory, right? To say that we drugged these men as if they were innocent is laughable. You doing cocaine is not implied consent that you want to do other drugs. She said that being a child athlete taught her to never give up. She said now she puts a ton of her energy into athletics. She drops in the word destiny, which I think was the name of her character in the movie. She said, I forgot to love myself along the way. She said that was her main mistake, is forgetting to love herself. She said, every situation I was caught in was just me trying to better myself in some capacity. I'm not here to play the victim and blame the results of my decisions solely on depression or my childhood pain. Then she starts talking about how she's really into working out now. She's like, oh, I love exercising. She said, coming out of the strip club world gave me clarity. She said her main job now is raising her daughter. She's a stay-at-home mom. She hustles hard for the PTA. She's on medication because I believe she did say she's diagnosed with bipolar. I fell in love with fitness. And she said, yeah, all she really is focused on now is her daughter and her life. And she said, you just have to condition your mind to count your blessings, not your problems. So that's that. Which I think this was a lot. This was a lot. Like, you really don't need to read it. I think I really told you everything. I didn't go over every single client she mentioned and all of that, but like, honestly, we read some from probably every page of that book. So, yeah. This made me not like her. Like, the movie, I didn't hate her, and doing the stream and the news stuff, I didn't hate her, but this made me not like her. Like, the way she talked about the other women, that really made me not like her. I'm kind of shocked by how awful that was. Thank you, Lemur Banana. I agree. I fully agree. So let's get into Samantha's underscore. This one is really not about them. Like, this one's not about the hustlers, the scam, all of that. This is actually a memoir. This is actually about her life. Is it written in a logical order that makes sense? No. But she does get into much more of the story about her life, which makes sense. She's also a little bit older. I'll read the back. Sex, drugs, and money, all of the ingredients that make up a strip club in New York City. Samantha, a hostess at one of the most exclusive strip clubs in Manhattan, takes you on a tour inside the private VIP rooms with her Fortune 500 clientele. She refers to herself as the Queen of Wall Street, and this is called A Breaking My Silence. Better book cover. It really is. Like, this is giving Instagram picture. This is at least, like, creative. I will say this book had more typos, but I felt like was more honest and made me like Samantha better, if we're being honest. So let's go ahead and get into it. A popular writer once wrote in the New York Magazine, describes Samantha Barbush as a single mother from the Bronx who started dancing at 19. Her body was Jessica Rabbit curvy, her lips heart-shaped, and her full hair, which concealed tattoos of a cascade of stars running down her back, was Cleopatra black. So that it's a quote about her in an article that's what she made her about the author. This felt a lot more personal. It's really a difficult read, I'm going to be honest. Even though I liked it better, it was harder to get through. Why are the police driving around my neighborhood with their lights on? You're not even going anywhere. You just have the lights on. Yeah. Keep going. Sure, tax dollars at work. This one was slightly more clear. This one, I was like, okay, we're commas, we're changing names, we're changing times, we're changing everything. She said, my name is Samantha Barbush, and my life took a drastic turn on the 14th of June, 2012. I think this is the day she got arrested. She said she was planning a reception for her wedding, but she was like kind of hesitant about the wedding, and her son wasn't happy about the wedding. She goes, I had just taken coffee. Her son was like, are you okay? She said, I'm not nervous, I'm just tired. She kind of makes it out to sound like this was her wedding day, but she never explicitly says that. So I don't know if she was just going to pay someone for something for the wedding or if it was her actual wedding day. I like Samantha more in the movie too. Like, I do feel for Rosalind, but like, girl, insane that they publish things like this. Dyslexia, My Life, horribly edited memoir I read in grad school reminds me of this. And then great books like the ones you get your students. I kind of love books that it's clear everyone involved didn't really know what they're doing. She says that all of it happened so quickly. She was partially traumatized. She talks about going in the DEA building. She said things started to make sense to her once she saw the paparazzi and things started coming together. She said, prior to entering the interrogation room, I was a completely different person who valued relationships and believed that trusting others was a wise investment. She was very, very hurt by Rosalind talking to the police. Like, she really, really did not like that. She said early in her life, she picked bad boys in relationships. She said that she had a group, Lily, Madison, and Katie and her. I think Lily is Rosalind. It was harder to tell, though. She said Madison was her best friend. She talks about Dr. Hartz, who's the guy that originally got the charges against them. She said, to my knowledge, he never did any drugs. He enjoyed wine. He liked a karaoke machine. So then he started going out with Katie. His visits also increased since he started seeing Katie. They went out for drinks. We kind of talked about this in the stream of how they got caught. She said, the allegations changed my life. Madison and I had both worked together. She used to crash at my house. It seemed like with the other girls, Samantha was very close and had a very, very close bond with them. Not so much with Rosalind. Like, some of this is honestly confusing. Throughout my life, I picked up the bad boys. She said she was always drawn to beauty and surgery. She said now she does real estate and medical aesthetics, I guess. She said it's difficult to get out of the clubbing industry. She also had her GED. She went to nursing school, but I don't think she ever worked as a nurse. She said, I made more money than CEOs. She said her son was her top priority. Her parents broke up when she was a teenager. She said she felt like her dad and her didn't have a good relationship because he gave her brother more attention. She said she started stripping at a club called Limelight. She originally started just working there, and then they got her to try and strip. She didn't like it. Went back to waitressing, eventually did start stripping. She said she was dating a DJ there. Madonna used to come there. She made $175 a night. They would have a hot body contest. She won that on a couple of times. She was a cocktail waitress at Flash Dancers. So it seemed like she more generally worked in the nightlife industry. It seems like Rosie was definitively a stripper, and it seems like Samantha had lots of different jobs at different points in times. Which is just different. And I also think that's why Samantha is nicer to the girls who engage in prostitution, because she's like, hey, I've had different jobs too. Like, I get it. She said that the manager bought her first gown to strip. She climbed on stage and was frozen. Even though I did not enjoy it, I ended up keeping my job as the cocktail waitress. Like I said, she tried it, didn't like it. She said there was a lot of rappers that came to this club called Playhouse, where she worked as a bartender. She met her son's father at Playhouse. Within a year, she got pregnant, but he was cheating on her a lot. And then this is what she said. She says, like, all these terrible things about him. And then she says, thank God many years later, my son's father and I have a great relationship. We were young back then and all make mistakes. So that was weird, because she doesn't explain how they got there at all. She said that this one club owner that she really loved, she worked there a long time. He got her into Playboy. He bought her first boob job. And she said that was a necessary thing in the adult entertainment industry. but they both published books. Yeah, and hers, same thing. It's not with a publisher. I think it's self-published. She said that her son's father really didn't like that she was stripping. He took care of me and my son for a while, and life proceeded smoothly and steadily. She tells a lot of different stories about men who were, like, taking care of her, but she never really explains, like, who they are, and a lot of them get really blurry. She said then she's with this other guy. She ended up being in a relationship with him for 5 years that was abusive. He beat me over and over again. She said she was still dancing at a club because she needed to make money to get away from him. Like, so it seems like she took a break, but then she went back. Like, her story was very hard to follow. Like, I really do want to just sit down with her. She said that her friend Tiffany's mom would watch her son all the time. That's another thing that confused me. Like, you know me, I never want to mom shame. But she was like, at many times in this book, she said, like, all I care about is my son. I wanted to protect my son. I would refuse to leave my son with just any random people. But then she contradicts herself and gives multiple occasions that she left her son with different people. Like, in one part of the book, she says, the only people I trusted my son with was my mom and my son's aunt. But then later, she's like, my neighbor used to watch my son. Tiffany's mom used to watch my son. She talks about going on private jets to Miami multiple times a month. And then she's like, my mother raised my son. And so, like, the son thing is kind of vague. I just found it interesting. Like, a lot of dissonance there as well. She said the man had a construction business, so running the club was not the only thing that he did. She said that she was, like, working in secret to try and make money to get away from him. And then she met a guy in New Jersey at the club, and he bought her a townhouse, and she was living in the townhouse. He bought it for her, put it in her name, was giving her money. She said that the neighbor was watching her son. She said it was beautiful. Her son was at a good school. She felt super safe. But then eventually the abusive ex, who's not the father of her son, found her, stabbed her a bunch of times. She said that she didn't think she was going to live, but fate had other plans. She said she was making between $5 to $1,000 a day. I don't know if that means 5,000 to 1,000 or $5 to 1,000. Then she finally got divorced. Apparently she had married that guy, but she didn't really explain it. She got a restraining order. After that, she decided to move to New York. But she said, like, oh, I needed to make money. But then she also says, my bills were paid and I did not have to pay rent at that time, but I had other expenses. She said, my desire to make money was the real driving force behind my efforts. And again, this is mainly about her life. She, like, barely gets into the scam stuff. She talks about Howard Stern as well. I'd finally gotten to know the owners and the host, basically the correct people to make some real money. She never really, like, super admits to stripping, but she does kind of say that she did it. She said, I began seeing a guy who was the owner of a famous cereal company. There were 500 girls working at Scores. This guy became my sugar daddy after 6 months. He would spend $100,000 in the club if he was happy. So she decided that she wanted to keep taking nursing classes. She also took real estate classes. She also developed a bikini line called Love Sexy Money. She did 2 fashion shows in Miami at Nikki Beach. This memoir already has more memorable life events, but is more believable than Rosalind's. And look, we, like, aren't even that far in. We're, like, maybe a third in. And she's like, that's what I mean. It seems like she's being pretty honest. She said she was getting all this jewelry, but ultimately her and Mr. Cereal, which I think it's cute that she calls him that, she said that they broke up because she was just never going to be a stay-at-home person. Like, that was just not going to happen. She liked working. She said, he gave me jewelry, trips, money, a credit card, anything I wanted, but none of it was going to stop me from leaving. He couldn't satisfy my will to work, which I think is, like, cool. She says that she began dating a mafia guy who was the club's client, and that's why she stopped dancing, because her boyfriend said he would blow up the club if she was stripping. So that's why she became a massage girl and host, which, like, I don't know, I kind of think massaging someone's, like, a little more intimate than dancing, but whatever. So she said, I no longer had to wear long, sexy dresses or ugly pointed toes. So she gave all of her stuff away. And this is when she started working with more girls. Let me skip through some of this. She said she got invited into the VIP rooms by this guy named Steven. She said that this guy was naked in the VIP room. Before we entered the room, Steven said, "What happens in the room stays in the room. Don't ever speak about it." But he also said, "Tonight is going to be one of the best nights of your life." And she said that there were a bunch of girls already in there. The guy was naked and sniffing lines of coke off of the girls. She said, "I clearly didn't have it under control." This is the one part I don't really believe. She's like, "I never did any of that stuff. I was just pretending to do coke. I wasn't taking my clothes off." She said, like, and that's the part I'm like, okay, so you've been in this business for 20 years and you were always just being demure in the corner? Like, all right, girl. She said, "We were in that room for 10 hours and I had $12,000. It was the first night the host allowed me to enter his life and become one of his girls." So it seems like Samantha was really the one that was like building the relationship with the club and like getting in with the host. It kind of seems like the host are the gatekeepers. She said Steven had a list. It was unbelievable. Rappers, football players, top finance guys, other big names. A matter of fact, there were CEOs of big corporations. So she said she really like solidified that relationship, even though it took a while. She said it took some time, but my wish was granted. The host ran the shows. She goes into a few different girls that she worked with. She said she really liked to be a mentor. Kind of the same thing that Rosalind said, but she's saying it nice. Rosalind was like, "Oh, she picked up all these dirty girls." And Samantha is like, "There were a lot of girls that I worked with and guided and showed them how to make money, and some of them kind of fucked me over." Like, it kind of seems like Samantha is more of a girl's girl than Rosalind is. She said, "I worked with this girl for 4.5 years. She has a typo in here. It says, like, you can see it. "I'll buy this Chanel bag for $6,000 and then all new paragraph, make it back every week." When I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be one sentence. She said there's a big client who used to get super fucked up on coke, bring 3 to 5 girls in his car till 6 in the morning. She said my mom would babysit my son. She said this other guy would take her shopping. He spent $21,000 in Louis Vuitton shoes, then another 17 on a high-end mall on Long Island. She said it was called fishing. She said that the club owners didn't like when they would take the guys shopping because then the clubs don't make any money. So they would always try to take the guys to the club. She said the longer the client stayed in the club, the more money the club made. Sometimes the cards were charged back and sometimes they weren't. They were known as the fishing nights. There would be 2 to 3 cars. We would all take the girls to find their prey. They would go to high-end steakhouses, the Four Seasons. She said most of the finance guys were already messed up. We would try and get them as fucked up as possible before they got back to the club. They called each other the Rat Pack, and their conversion rate was over 50%, which is really good. And then there's some typos here, so I couldn't really understand what she was saying there. And then she said, and then came the fluffers. These were the lower tier girls who would do the, quote, dirty work. Sometimes their task would include sexual activity. Of course, the top girls never participated in those escapades. These parties always came with huge payouts for me and the girls. There was one night at Hustler where a well-known R&B singer who had a volatile reputation, Chris Brown maybe, was partying all night in a private room. He wanted to continue the party in his own room, so he said he would pay each girl an extra $8,000. They went to his hotel suite. They took their phones and made all the girls sign NDAs. And she said he was so paranoid that there was no sex involved. Even the fluffers did not need to do anything. Once he saw we were leaving, he said, "Please don't go. I'm sorry. I'm fucked up. I like your company." They exchanged phone numbers, and we've been best friends ever since. That's what I mean. I feel like she has a few stories in here where she talks about the fluffers, which I think fluffer is a much nicer term than dirty girl, where she talks about the fluffers, and it's either neutral or positive. Like, it's either like, this was their job, I paid them to do it, or it was like, I really cared about this girl, I felt horrible that she was in this situation, I wanted to help her. Like, I don't think she is the most respectful, but she's a lot more respectful than homegirl here. She said, after one night, my biggest Wall Street finance clients left around 5 a.m. He spent $115,000. The thing I didn't like about this book is a lot of it, it's what she said it was going to be, but a lot of it was just kind of, in my opinion, repetitive stories about guys at the club spending tons of money. I have a shoe fetish. I told him easy, no problem. We spent $80K in less than an hour. Let's do it again tomorrow. He offered me 30 grand to not go back to the club, but I begged him to go or else I would be out of a job and I would be blacklisted. He bought me Rolexes. He lived in a mansion. He was fucked up on MDMA. All these about different people. Some of them are about the same, but like that was very much her vibe. Then she says, after this other girl, Tyler, joined them, she talks much more in depth about the other girls. I'm not going to get into the specifics of all of them because we'd be here all night. But Samantha was like, dirty girls, losers. Rosalind said, like, these were the dirty girls, these were the losers, these were my colleagues. Samantha, you can tell she had relationships with these girls. Like, you can tell she cared about these women. Even if they are dysfunctional and codependent and they fucked each other over, she says, like, she talks about their personalities, their lives, their boyfriends, their husbands, their children, things like that. She also says it's super important to sell bottles. This is a thing I wrote repeat that she said a bunch of times. Fortune 500, top celebrities, football players, singers, CEOs of major car companies, hardware stores, all came in to forget their problems and party their asses off. And I just need you to see how many, is it that one? How many typos are in this? Party their asses off. Forget their problems. Like, it's a lot. She said when we ran out of Coke, we would also do Molly. We always had to make sure they had supplies for Coke, or at least one of their girls did. She does not explicitly admit to drugging them. She says, like, I never did drugs. She's like, I've worked in this industry for 20 years and I've never had a drug problem. So I don't know about that lack of accountability. She did say she was drinking a lot and it was really difficult, but she said you kind of have to drink in that environment. No, I think we're the editor right now. She said, my mother helped me raise my son. I didn't trust any other people. My son's aunt and my mom were the only people I trusted. But earlier, she mentioned multiple other people she left her son with. So whatever, I guess. She said that her mom passed away. It was very traumatic for her. She said that her mom was in the hospital with a liver problem. They told her, like, hey, we need to flush her liver. Come back in a few hours. And then her mom died in the hospital. It's a lot. I feel bad for her in that sense. It seems like it was very traumatic. She said, to this day, I don't want to set foot in North Shore Hospital, which is in Manhasset, because she said that they did not care for her mother correctly. She said, we booked a funeral for her. She wanted to be cremated, and so we did just that. I called one of my clients, Frank, who was the CEO of Home Hardwares. He was my client from Hustlers, and with time, we became great friends. This is what killed me. Not only did he help me pay for the wake, he sent me on a trip to Aruba and also sent Kelly and Beth along with me. Kelly and Beth are two girls that were in her crew. We went for a 3-week vacation to an amazing island best hotel that really helped me come out of the trauma caused by my mother's death. He was a true friend. He paid for my bills for the month and did all the funeral arrangements and forced me to take a trip to Aruba with Beth and Kelly. He left his credit card on file at the hotel for shopping and sent us with some cash in case we needed it. It was really very sweet of him. I had only met him 5 weeks prior to my mother's death. Initially, I did not like him getting so close to us as in the crew, but when the time came, he showed that he was a gem of a person. It's not about the money, but he had a great heart. He loved to party and had an insane love of cocaine. But deep down, beyond the party animal he was, there was a genuine person who was searching for love. He treated me like a businesswoman, but always as a friend. Sadly, he was looking for love in the wrong places. All the women around him were after his money. You just talked about how he paid your bills for months and sent you on a 3-week trip to Aruba, and you're being like, those other bitches. She said, he tried to get married to this Brazilian girl. It didn't work out for him. I'm not in contact with him, but I hope he's doing fine. Can we read the publishing on each page? I'll show you more of the typos. She said, I had money, but I was in need of love and attention. Her father and brother really helped her during this time. She said eventually she got back into a routine and went back to work. She said that this guy, Bill, was a client of hers. She said Bill was kind of weird. He had a fetish where he liked to rub olive oil on the girls and wanted them to rub it back on him. He did a lot of drugs, MDMA, LSD, things like that. Where's the part about? Yeah, so he was from Florida and lived on Fisher Island. And she said as time passed, the frequency of his visits increased. He would get there on Thursdays and fly back on Tuesdays. It was time when Hannah and I had an apartment in South Beach. I would even take my dogs with me. It was fun. Leaving on Thursday after partying and returning on Tuesdays, we wouldn't even sleep. So this is what I mean. Like, she was saying, oh, I never wanted to leave my son with anyone. But you're saying you had an apartment in South Beach, and for many, many times you got on this guy's private jet and were leaving for 4 days at a time. Like, not even judging you. It's just, like, not adding up for me. We would only go home to check on our kids and ensure everything was fine. Then we would meet him by noon on Friday and head to Teterboro Airport. Flying private, of course. We did that for 8 months straight. It wouldn't have stopped if he wasn't remarrying. He was the CEO of an advertising firm. She said that the club host did not mind her traveling back and forth, but when they stopped seeing him, the club host did not believe her. Chat, my oyster stew for my corn casserole turned out well. I'm happy for you. I don't really know what that means. She said that this guy would pay $12,000 to watch porn and rub our body against his with olive oil. I think there's worse things. And then he would bring his coworkers into the club and they would spend tons of money and he wouldn't stop them. He was really into drugs. And then, although Bill was not a client but also a friend, moving down to Florida and settling down was not on my mind, so he started withering away and stopped visiting the club. Because he wanted her to go with him to Florida permanently. She said, I had quite a few high-profile clients, CEOs of multinational companies. She said, I've seen the dark side of these people, and believe it or not, it was pretty ugly. I believe that. I believe her when she says that. She said that the host really, like, ghosted her because of the situation with Bill, because he stopped coming around. They thought she was, like, hiding him or something. More about the Molly and cocaine. She said that there was this guy who was like super into drugs and it kind of scared her because she said she didn't want him to die in the club. She said she was terrified. It seemed like he wasn't breathing. He would not go home. She said she did not have the heart to witness a man die on a drug overdose. She said they worked at a different club called Roadhouse that had a strict no drug policy. This club owner was Lily's friend. Lily is Rosalind, I believe. She said, I only left it 7 to 8 months prior to my arrest. So same story, like I was about to stop. I was leaving. Again, kind of out of order here. She talks about a specific client named Andy. She says, listen to the difference in the way she talks about this trans woman. Andy was into transgender women, and so I had to make sure his needs were addressed. I invited Ava, who was one of my best friends, and she would join us to hang out and party with him. Ava also made a lot of money with us. She would go out and bring clients and take them back to the clubs. We would help her run the money with the manager. She didn't work with these clubs. As a transgender woman, she had to face a lot of difficulties. She was drop dead gorgeous and made crazy money by entertaining top errand businessmen. It might sound unreal, but it's the truth. All the high-profile guys wanted something different. They weren't looking for porn stars or the girl next door. They wanted something different. I don't like saying this. She said chicks with dicks. Ava for them was a complete package. Ava looked like a model. Andy had fallen in love with her. Every time he would come into town, we would call and invite Ava for him. Like, she's talking about Ava like a human being. She's talking about Ava like a coworker, the same way she talks about the other girls. And I don't know if Ava is the transgender person that Rosalind was referring to, but, like, I think the difference in the way they talk about their transgender colleagues is blatant and very telling. And, like, it seems like I said, Samantha's a girl's girl. She wants to work with these women. She wants everybody to make money. Like, she just wants us all to have a good time. She said, blah, blah, blah. He would buy everyone Chanel bags. By 4 o'clock in the morning, Lily and I had to go home to look after our kids. Kelly would be done for the day. Blah, 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 blah. She said, I never ran a credit card in my life. We did not even have the access or capability to run credit cards, which is not what Rosalind said. Rosalind said they had a mobile credit card runner. She talks more about Ava being, like, so popular and tons of men were in love with Ava. She looked like Jessica Rabbit. She said she also had a huge penis, which is, like, a hilarious sentence. She looked like Jessica Rabbit, and then immediately into that. She said some of the clubs pretended to have a no drug policy, but that was bullshit. Without the drugs, none of their clients would be spending there. She said, I did not need to drug them. I only used my skills and brains. But she did say they were using a lot of drugs. She said, for every client, there was a fluffer for whatever we couldn't handle. And I feel like her saying what we couldn't handle is giving respect to the girls that are doing that work. Like, she's just saying it's not work that I want to do, so I hired girls that are. She said Lily, Rosalind, was book smart. She was good at the calculations. She was the finance person of the crew. She was still working at Hustlers and Flash Dancers, which Rosalind kind of says, like, I was a businesswoman now. So they went to Backpage again, got another girl from Backpage. That was very much in Rosalind's book as well. Samantha says that she used to dance in Japan when she was young, and she made lots of money because she had blonde hair and huge boobs, which was like the look back in that time. She said she also went to Las Vegas for conventions and danced a lot. She said in Japan she would go for a month and come back with $30,000 when she was very young. She said, but I believe when you are 40 years old, it's time for you to pack your bags. She said one of my biggest clients was the owner of a very famous sneaker company. He was my biggest client. He spent $272,000. There's also like this random highlighted portion of the book, which like none of the other parts are highlighted. So I find that kind of interesting. She said he was not my client. Lily brought him in, which tracks Rosalind said, the sneaker guy. An old friend of mine would call him her sugar daddy. And he had been a regular. All he wanted was a karaoke machine. He was also always pleasant to be around. Ava was working her magic at Roadhouse. It says Ava was working her magic still at the Roadhouse strip club in Queens today. When there would be a dead night, she would go out fishing. Upon finding a client, she would contact us. She said that her and the other girls are going to Miami a lot, Ava Madison, and she says, this is the part that I found telling. Lily was just a coworker while the rest of us were actual friends. Ooh. Yikes. She says, as a matter of fact, I was quoted in the New York Post and Daily News as the woman version of the Wolf of Wall Street, which I don't know if I would agree with that. Chapter 11, Dirty Money. So she starts talking about this guy named Gary. She said this disgusting fellow was watching child pornography, so she flipped out and spit him in the face, but he was a regular at the club, so the club owners put up with that and let him do that. She like really gives it to club owners in this book. She said, I never went into that room again, and the club owners paid her to not talk to him because every time she would see him, she would like harass him and spit on him and hit him and stuff. And then she said, then another client who she calls the shit client, I think she mentioned this earlier, and Rosalind mentioned it too. They had a client who liked like ass stuff. So they called him the shit client because the room would always smell like shit because that's what they were doing in there. So the pedophile guy and the shit guy started coming in on the same day, and they became friends and started partying with each other. She's just kind of talking about how this industry can really like be traumatizing, and they would be in the clubs for like multiple hours. She said the club did not care because they made their money. She said the pedophile was still coming in. She said it was crazy to her that people allowed this guy to hang around here. She said that the shit guy and the porn guy were like doing stuff to each other as well. And then she says, then there was this new guy. They brought Ava to the club. She said Ava was not a lower tier girl. She was a high end girl. She was the it girl, and she was what they all wanted. So she's talking about Ava quite nice. She's talking about some other lower tier girls. They would give them checks. She talks about a famous civil rights attorney who was really into partying and would bring in a bunch of sex toys. She talks about this other guy who planned a trip for Vegas, but then he couldn't make it, so he let them go anyway. A lot of this book is like, wow, all these fabulous men have treated me to so many fabulous experiences. She said there was a psychic guy. He would come in the club 5 days straight and party. She said there was Patrick, who lived in Miami and dated some of her friends. She said I was more into gangsters and tough guys. She said eventually when we first started dating, Patrick was seeing another woman. She eventually figured out that he was seeing one of her friends, and then she fought her friend at the club over him. And it seems like she's been in a lot of abusive relationships, and she said like a lot of guys would buy her whatever she wanted but were very 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 controlling as well, and she said it would just get crazier by the day. She said there was a guy named Rocky who made her fall in love again, and then that is what changed her designation to masseuse, which she kind of already mentioned, a little bit redundant here. She said I couldn't say no to the money, and then her godmother made her realize she wasn't really in control of the situation. She said that she never touched MDMA in her life, that the authorities just made their case an example. She said she tried to get out of the club a bunch of times, but she would just always end up coming back. She said, I never robbed anyone in my entire life. When my clients would cross their credit card limits, we would get extensions so we could stay in the room and make more money. I was like a secretary or a banker or a salesperson who ensured everyone was happy and making money. I knew it came with a price tag in the end, and I did pay for the price sooner rather than later. She says that today she owns multiple medical spas. She's in the process of opening a lash bar. She said she's been able to train with the top plastic surgeons in the world while she's been on her 5-year probation. She really does not explain much about her arrest at all. She gets into it a little bit later. She says, I went to Cabo San Lucas. I flew with UFC fighters and I partied with them, and then I got paid by them. So she's going backwards again. She said, who is this? She said this other girl, Natalia, that she tried to take in was the one drugging the clients a lot. She said that most of the girls do drug their clients, but she never did that and never wanted to be a part of that. And then she said where they had this kind of setup situation. I talked about this in my stream where Lily claimed that it was a setup, and Samantha says, I believe she knew that there was a cop there, and that she said, I never believed what Lily told me. She was paranoid because she was going through a lot of stress, and she seems like she firmly believes that Lily, Rosalind, kind of set up the investigation along with one of the other girls, where Rosalind says, oh, Samantha's friend was a drug addict, and she's the reason that we were investigated. She said Lily was very greedy, and the money would never be enough with her. Lily would always push for more, and she would say, that's it. No, working with her was my downfall. If I had not left Hustler, we never would have started working together. I'm not blaming her, as it's my fault. She isn't a bad person, but she was the first one to finish her case, so some things can't be forgotten. I wish her well, and I'm not a hateful person. If I saw her in the streets, I would say hello, and she would say hello, and I would do the same, but we would not be at dinner together. She says that she was a therapist, a comforter, a consultant. It was more than just stripping, but it was very, very draining. She says that she has really good sales skills. She said, this is the part I don't know if I believe. 99% of the time, I would be eating and drinking in the room fully dressed. It was all about hanging out in the room and doing the math for a split with the crew and club. I would always be engaged in conversing with my boyfriends, doing all kinds of stuff. A lot of people might have a hard time believing it, me included, but this was my reality for many years. And then she brings up Ava again and the sex toys lawyer guy. A bunch of people didn't like drugs. Then she gets into Dr. Hart being all over TMZ, and how she kind of pokes holes in Dr. Hart's story, and she says that's kind of how her case was able to not land her in prison. She said, my case lasted the longest. It took an extra year because her attorney did not give up and got her the best deal possible. She said that originally her ex-husband hired an attorney because his store got raided as a part of this, and she didn't like that attorney, so she fired him and hired her own attorney. She said, like, her present day kills me. She said, I met many different types of men in this business. Some of them were nothing but trash, while others were great friends of mine. Even to this day, they still ask me if there's anything I need for my family or my business. A couple great friends from Dubai and Beirut always surprise me with money in my account. I don't seek money. It just comes for me as a courtesy of my friendships with people. I've been out of the business for 7 years now. Many of my friends are still in it. I really liked this part. I will always support my fellow strippers and sex workers. I fought my court case for 3 years. My lawyer, Bruno, got me a plea for 5 years probation, which will be up soon. I've changed my life and gotten trained by the best plastic surgeons around the world. So I like that she kind of like wrote it really to bring attention to this. She says, The purpose of writing this book was not to get fame, but to rather spread awareness that not all that glitters is gold. I'm writing this book because it is my time for the world to hear my true story, not a fictionalized version. She talks shit about Hustlers, how she's not a part of it, and she hated it, and they wanted her to sign away her life rights, and that's why she didn't do this. She said, some may call me the goat of the business, but when I look back, it's not that I disagree. She said, I was not somebody who went on poles or wore bikinis in high-end clubs. I was rather the therapist. That was how the men were comfortable handing me over tons of money. She said, we hired girls from back pages, so we never even kissed our clients. Lily was mean to these younger girls while I was the nice one. They hated her as she was bossy. Lily took the girls as workers and not friends. I had a heart and I always will. I didn't see them that way or judged anyone for what they did or how they made their money, which I think is like a good perspective on that. She said she wanted to tell her side of the story. She said a lot of the stuff that people have said she never witnessed with her own eyes, but I think we should leave it on that note where she said, I will never judge anyone for how they made their money. Of these two books, this one was easier to read. This one was better to read. I'm really glad that I read them. It was really cool to get both of their perspectives on this and their life and all of that. Lily. But I don't know. I just like, it really seems like a lot of cognitive dissonance. It seems like both of them blamed each other. It seems like Samantha took slightly more accountability than Rosalind, but not a ton. Let me know what you think. Let's do a little poll moment of this format and this vibe. My views were very low tonight, probably because it's Thanksgiving, or maybe it's because I did books. We'll do another one of these and see. Love it. Meh. Don't like. Needs more structure. Okay. At the end of the stream, my view of Rosalind was more favorable. That surprisingly flipped, LOL, but I'm still frustrated by both. Yeah, that's the best way I'd describe it. Like, I am just deeply frustrated by both. I'm excited to do more of these because I did this little backwards. Like, I read these and then I was like, no, I need to talk about this with them. And so then I went back and highlighted. Next time I want to like annotate more as I'm reading a book. I agree, it kind of needs more structure. Like maybe some slides, maybe some calls out. I don't know. What ideas do we have? I'll stick around for a couple minutes. Okay, overwhelming needs more structure. Interesting. Oh, my nose is stuffy and it's raining. I had chicken wings and a Caesar salad for dinner and it really hit, I'm going to be honest. Ugh, I got my nails done and they're like literally destroyed and there's like cracks in them and it's jarring. Needs more structure. I agree. I feel like this was a good starting place, but it can be better. Yeah, I would enjoy some, like having this just be like constant, I didn't love. Okay, let me do this poll. I'm going to do more. I'm just polling you all a lot tonight. Ideas for structure. Oh, I can't spell structure. Let's start with that. Structure. .cam to see book better. I feel like I needed more to look at. I agree. This was like very podcast. Slides with quotes, slides with memes, slides with pictures, all of the above. I do agree. We need something to look at. What that thing should be, I don't know. Let us know which books we're reading ahead of time so we can read them too. Okay, I will. I need like a calendar. For you all. Next week, we're going to be on our traditional stream vibe and we're going to be talking about Tom Sandoval. So it'll be a pretty negative time because we don't like him, but I think you all will enjoy it. Let me look at my schedule. I loved it. I just never vote in time, but I think that I'd be super confused without watching the other stream about them. I kind of agree with you, even though I said it wasn't going to be that way. It kind of was. Okay, so on December 9th, we're going to be reading about I read Christine Brown's book, So that's what we're going to do. So I'll add in more pictures and more quotes and things of that nature. That'll be the plan. That's the plan. So next week, Tom Sandoval. The week after that, it's going to be a book one. So maybe some memes, maybe some quotes, maybe some pictures. Okay, I have it. I have it. I have it. I have it. This is the structure and this is the vibe. Okay. For each chapter, there will be one slide or a couple with memes and stuff. How do we feel about that format? Because I just needed to like do this one as like a, how is this going to work? Let me do a poll about that. Okay. Slides based on chapters. No. Yes. Okay. So if I had like 1 or 2 slides per chapter, maybe give clips to add context to the book. Okay, period. Period. I would prefer quotes over a cam probably. That's what I think too. Like with the camera, I think that's going to be annoying. But skip over chapters that are boring, always. Okay, that's what I'll do is I'll just make like a little outline because I did like when we read over her chapter titles. So that's what the book ones will be, is like we go over the chapter. I like the vibes of comparing and contrasting the books too. Me too. I did really like that. It'll be hard to do in 1 week. It worked because both of these were so short. Okay. I really appreciate you kind of sticking with me through some changes and kind of like reworking how we do this. Those of you that are here, those of you that skipped this, I guess I'll forgive you. But thank you so much for being here. I hope that you enjoyed this. Next week, we're going to be talking about Tom Sandoval. He's a little rat of a person. And the next time that we do a book talk, it will be more structured with specific chapters and memes and reactions and things like that and quotes. And yeah, what I'll do is just like put page numbers in the slides so that I can like live read to you the things that I want to read in a more structured way. Because I felt like a lot of tonight was me looking for things. So I think I just kind of want to come into it a little bit more organized. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. I hope everyone enjoys their Thanksgiving. Make sure you do a land acknowledgement before you go on your walk. Make sure that you bring up Charlie Kirk at the dinner table. Yeah, talk about everyone's gender. Like, I think that's the theme. It's going to be a woke Thanksgiving. And that's the plan. Wish me luck. I have to make a pie, and I am not really like a housewife type of, I love Real Housewives. I'm not really like a homemaker type of person. Pray for all your retail workers. Today I went to the grocery store to get a singular salad, and it took a very, very long time. I have to go to the grocery store for real tomorrow to get actual food. So I love you guys so much. This is my favorite part of my week. Thank you for being patient when we do schedule changes because I'm touring. I really am grateful that you guys like stick with me through that. For everyone that has come on the tour stops and come to see us, I really, really appreciate you guys. I low-key got promoted on the tour, so I'm going to get more time in our set in future shows. So before I would usually do like 10, 15 minutes, it'll be a little bit longer, so I'm excited about that. Happy Indigenous Peoples Week. There's a lot going on. It's all happening. It's all happening. If you know, you know, it's all happening.